detail with how all of the covenants in Scripture always have covenant requirements. And when Abraham, for example, was required in the covenant to follow God and to be moral, we don't set that over against the fact that he was saved by grace. Okay, so in other words, grace and works are not antithetical when you understand that grace can move or can bring about good works. How's that? And this is actually Augustine has insights on this when he's writing against the Donatists and against the Pelagians. He does have insights on this, which is fine because actually, as we said, the Synod of Orange, which is ratified by later ecumenical councils, Orange I and Orange II, condemns semi-Pelagianism. So Orthodoxy has to also condemn semi-Pelagianism. Anyway, too about sola fide is that it rests on Nestorianism. And the way it rests on Nestorianism is that you have this penal declaration in Protestant and Calvinist theology where this is the classic reformers. They all teach this. Now, some of the modern Protestants and Calvinists and so forth might shy away from this because it's obviously retarded and blasphemous, but the older ones do, and they teach, Luther even teaches this, Calvin, that the Father damned the Son as the payment, right? So we owed God an infinite payment of hell, and so God damned the Son to pay for the debt or whatever. That either requires that Jesus be a human person who got damned, which is Nestorianism, or the Father damned the Son, which splits the Trinity. So that is the chief, most blasphemous, wicked doctrine of all Calvinism and Protestantism is the splitting of the Trinity in the stupid idea of the Father damning the Son. And that is absolutely historic Protestant theology. It's historic Lutheran and Calvinist theology. It's taught by Charles Hodge. It's taught by the Puritans. Father didn't damn the Son. That's completely stupid. And the only way you could come to that conclusion is if you have a Nestorian Jesus, a Jesus who could be damned while the Son of God remains in the Godhead. That's Nestorianism. To a Jesus who's the Son of God and then a human Jesus who's damned. Come on. Anybody who knows what Nestorianism is and knows that it's condemned and why it's condemned is because it leads back to Arianism, knows that this is retarded. And yet, how many of the classical reformers teach this stupid doctrine? Two ways to read the Council of Chalcedon. One way was the Cyrillian way, and the other way was in a Nestorian way. So what happened was, the tragedy was that after the Council of Chalcedon, and the West, by the way, still kind of did this. The West will erroneously at times view the incarnation as an addition formula. This is why there were later councils, is because there's two different ways to read the tome of Pope Leo at the council. So this is the wrong way to do it, which many Western and Protestants read it this way. Jesus is basically an addition formula. And they'll read it like this. They'll read it like, Pope Leo's tome teaches that Jesus is a human nature plus his divine nature, and this equals divine person Jesus. Now, everybody who's Orthodox and who is familiar with Nestorianism knows that that is wrong. That is the wrong way to read Pope Leo's tome. But many of the Monophysites did read it this way, and they were correct. They're not correct, but I'm saying they were correct when they said, if that's what Leo means, this is wrong because this is not right. Jesus is not the product of some addition formula to give us a divine person Jesus. Not a divine nature that smushes with a human nature, or the divine nature did not become incarnate, did it? No, it did not. It's a divine person from all eternity who assumes an impersonal human nature. So this is the correct formula. This is the correct way to read it. Jesus is a divine person from all eternity, right? Second person of the Godhead. And he assumed an impersonal human nature. So this is why St. Cyril was correct against Nestorius to say that the sole subject of all the actions of Christ. There's only one subject present for every action of Christ, whether it's being crucified, whether it's walking on water, whether it's the breaking of the bread, the loaves. The only person present is the divine person. That's why we're not Nestorians, right? So this is St. Cyril's basic model here. So now one could read then the tome of Pope Leo at Chalcedon in either the Cyrillian way or in the addition formula way, which is dumb and Nestorian. So that's why there's later councils. So that's why they got mad. They said, that's what that council means. We don't want any of that. That's a Nestorian. Leo is basically reaffirming Nestorianism. So then we get the monophysis, that Jesus essentially is one incarnate nature of the Logos. And the reason for that is also because, unfortunately, Cyril did use that phrase. But he used that phrase when he was trying to stress what he talked about as inhypostatized. Okay? And what he means is that it's the same point he was making when he talked about Jesus as the sole subject of all of the actions of Christ being a divine person. There is no human person in Jesus at all. There's a fully human nature, but no human person. And we do that to guard the salvation as a whole. Everything hinges on this. Why? Because the only person present for all of those actions is a divine person who's inhypostatized in a human nature. So in other words, when Cyril says there's one incarnate nature, he's talking about the fact that when Jesus is walking around doing what he's doing, there's only one Jesus there. Any of the actions of God, the energies of God, whatever, they're all personal. They're all inhypostatized. In other words, there's no abstract divine nature. There's no abstracted Jesus. The only Jesus is the one who came in the mode of human nature. The sole subject of all of the actions of Christ is one divine person, the eternal Logos. And this is why we're not Nestorian. This is why Jesus is not a human person. This is why he's an eternal person. He's the Logos. He's divine. This is why there's no hippie Jesus. There's no buddy Jesus, because he is the Pantocrator, the eternal Lord. Now, he's fully human. He cries, he hungers, he experiences and has and possesses full humanity. All right? He has a human soul. He has a human will. He has a human body, flesh, right? But his humanity it's not fallen. It's incorruptible. It's essentially the new Adam. So when we understand that, then we understand that any other scheme, and this is really bad in the Protestants, they don't even know that they're Nestorian because they don't know this whole debate. They don't realize that in order for their penal atonement view of Protestantism, they need to have the Father essentially condemn the Son. The Father damns the Son in the crucifixion. How is this possible? Well, he either has to be a human person who gets damned, then we're back to Nestorianism, or it's the Father splitting the Son and damning him, and the Trinity gets severed, which is completely retarded. So penal substitutionary atonement theory in the Reformed classical Lutheran sense is utterly blasphemous and not true. So that is the easiest way, by the way, to refute Protestantism. But most Protestants they're not anywhere near this. They have no idea. When you start talking about inhypostatized, and they don't know what you're talking about. The theology of St. Cyril is called henosis, henotic theology.